Hi everyone, welcome back to episode 11 of Two Girls, One Crime. I'm Emily.
I am Miss Megan.
Oh, whoa. And today we were talking about a crazy case, which I'm sure a lot of you have heard of, especially if you're listening from the New England area. Um, we're talking about Karen Read today. This was a huge one,
Major
obviously.
T.
I'm,
Major
yes,
T.
yes. I am from Massachusetts, as I said before, and obviously this happened in Massachusetts, so this is, it hits
Close to
close to
your
home.
heart.
Yes, and like everybody in my family, all my friends back home, obviously they were all following this at the time. We obviously were not living in Massachusetts at the time. We've been in Wisconsin, as we said. So it's fun to kind of look back on this and, get all the information. So,
Mhm.
like I said, we're talking about Karen Read and her whole case and John O'Keefe and all of that. So we're going to get into this trial that has, or this case that has so much information. And we're going to, we know that we're not going to get everything. We know that we're not going to, we're just trying to get the main information here. So, Megan, take
Yeah.
it away with a little bit of background.
Again, like Em said, right? This background's super, super brief. Quick overview for those of you who don't know who these two individuals are. We got Karen Read, John O'Keefe. Karen Read, who is the suspect in this case, was born on February 26th of 1980 in Taunton,
Taunton, yes,
Massachusetts.
pretty good, pretty good.
Yes, look at me go. And she went to Bentley University. She got her bachelor's and master's in finance, so very much in the financial world. She was a financial analyst and an adjunct professor until she was arrested in 2022. There's an interview she did kind of after she was deemed not guilty for everything, which we'll get into, that her life was very routine. She would work her financial job during the day, taught students at night, and would go home to her boyfriend. And it was like the perfect little life. Nothing really crazy in there, nothing out of the ordinary. Um, John O'Keefe, who was the victim in this case, was born December 8th, 1975 in, I want to say Braintree, but
That's what it is. That's what it is.
Okay, in Braintree, Massachusetts. I hope all the people from the New England states are like, go Megan go.
Yep.
But he went to Northeastern and got his master's degree from UMass Lowell in criminal justice. So he ended up, did I say it right?
Maybe I should have done the background.
Did I say it
Lol.
right?
But yeah, UMass Lowell.
He went to Northeastern and got a master's degree from UMass Lowell
Yeah, okay.
in criminal justice. Guys, I'm learning my Massachusetts
She is.
lingo.
And you've done
Um,
pretty good. You got the first two right on the first
thank you,
try, so
thank you.
I'm proud.
Anyways, he went on to become a police officer in Boston for 16 years. He also became the guardian of his niece and nephew after his sister and brother-in-law passed away. So that's kind of a key component throughout this. Um, Not super high on the priority list, but something to keep in mind as to following along this story.
Mhm.
Um, the two dated in 2004 very briefly. They rekindled around COVID in 2020 over Facebook during the pandemic. And then kind of leading into, again, 2021, 2022, things start to go a little bit downhill for this couple.
Yeah. So this has a lot of information and a lot of like specific times. So if I'm looking over here, it's because I want to make sure that I have the correct timing because that makes a difference. So this all kind of began on January 28th of 2022. Um, Huge blizzard. Like this was a huge weekend or week of a snowstorm in Massachusetts. Huge blizzard. Karen Read and John O'Keefe, they went to met up for drinks at this place in Canton called CF McCarthy's. I'd never heard of it, but I also don't live in Canton. At about 9 p.m. So they got a few drinks there about 9 p.m. At 11, they went, it was like basically across the street to Waterfall Bar and Grill, also in Canton, obviously, where they met up with like a ton of friends. There was like a fellow cop, Brian Albert, and his wife, who are like important people. But there were like, I think like 6 people that they met up with for drinks there. So security footage shows them leaving that bar at 12:11 a.m., so after midnight, and they all went to the Albert's house for this like household party, or a house party. And many of them were going. There was obviously that cop that I said, obviously it was his house. There was the sister of that cop's wife and her husband. And there was also a member of like the ATF, which is the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms Unit. So they all, plus Karen Read and John O'Keefe, decided that they would go to the Albert's house. Karen didn't really want to stay out super long, so she was like, all right, I'll drop you off there. And then she was going back to O'Keefe's house, where she would spend the night. We know at this bar, Karen Read and everybody else had a few drinks. Read drove her and O'Keefe in that car to the Albert's house. She did have a few drinks. She wasn't super drunk, obviously, but she was drinking, which you're not allowed to do. She was not super familiar with the area, and so she needed directions. The sister, her name was Jennifer McCabe of the Alberts, called John O'Keefe at 12:14 and gave them directions to this house. It is said that they arrived at the house at 12:24 a.m., so 10 minutes. We see this in O'Keefe's phone, where investigators had looked that he had a like navigation app open, obviously to find the directions. The navigation app closed at 12:24, and the phone was also turned off at 10:24, but about 10 seconds later. So this is where the timing gets pretty specific, so I'm going to make sure that I'm reading this correctly. So between 12:24, when they got there, and 12:31, John O'Keefe's phone recorded no movement at all, so it was in the same place. His phone was unlocked with Face ID one time between 12:24 and 12:25, so within that minute, and he got a message from Jennifer McCabe that was like marked as red, and then the phone was locked again. At 12:27, he got a message from McCabe again saying, "Here?" ? Exclamation point. At 12:29, there was a 7-second call between him and McCabe. At 12:31, she texted him saying, "Pull behind me," and then the phone was locked one last time at 12:32 a.m. So within that like span of like literally not even 10 minutes, a lot kind of happens with his phone, where he's like getting messages, it's locked, it's unlocked, all of that. But right at 12:32, the phone is locked. There was no movement recorded from his phone until after 6 a.m. So those like 5.5 to 6 hours, there was no movement on the phone. So this is where it gets a little what happened, what didn't happen. Read claims that she saw John O'Keefe go into the house. People who showed up a little later to the party said that they saw Read in her car, sitting alone outside of the house. Someone else said that they saw her driving around like in the neighborhood safely. It didn't look like she was like too intoxicated or whatever. But people inside the house say that they did not see him come in or any time after that they all left the bar. So that's a little bit, that's where it gets like the first part that's like a little bit sus. Yeah, she says that she saw him go in the house. Everyone else inside the house says that they hadn't seen him since the bar. Interesting. So Read said that she kind of like became impatient waiting for him. I guess he was going into the house to like make sure it was still okay that like just he came over and not her too. That's what she says. So she became impatient waiting for him to come out to like, you know, make sure that it was okay for him to be there. So she began driving towards his house to go stay the night. Her car was seen like right as she left the Albert's house. Her car recorded like they call it like a text stream or a trigger. which is usually caused by like quick acceleration or usually over like ice or snow or like steering or braking, but not usually collisions.
And
But
that's a
there was like
key
that
part.
is a that is a key part. Um, so again, it was a huge snowstorm. People were actually like not supposed to be on the roads according to the news and police. So it wouldn't be shocking, a quick acceleration over ice or snow, steering or braking makes sense with the conditions, but it is very interesting that a collision was not what caused this like trigger in the car.
Hmm. It's
So
also so interesting that there's like she's saying, right, like, oh, I saw him go into the house, he never came
yeah,
out, I got annoyed, I left. But
yeah,
everyone else is saying, no, he never came into the house.
yeah,
We saw her sitting alone in the car. All of these things where it's kind of like you're saying the exact opposite of what's going on.
yeah. And it's so interesting. Obviously, I know that the two of them drove together, but it's so interesting that nobody had even seen him since they left the bar, and everybody who saw her just saw her sitting alone in the car.
Well, I think what's also fascinating is like, okay, you can kind of see where only one part of the story makes sense, where it's like she's claiming he went into the house,
Yeah,
and but people did see her sitting alone in the car. So it's
right.
like during that time period,
Yeah.
where was he?
Literally those like 9 minutes or whatever I just
Yeah,
said.
like where was he?
Right. Hmm. This is where it gets interesting. Again, this is a lot of timing, so I'm making sure I'm getting it right. So, between 12:33 and 12:36, John O'Keefe's phone received 7 unanswered calls from Karen Reed's phone. So, 3 minutes, 7 unanswered calls. Her phone connected to his house's Wi-Fi, so we knew that she was back at the house. She sent a lot of texts and a lot of voicemails. At 12:37, she says the F word a lot, which I don't know if we can say, so I'm just going to say effing, okay? She says at 12:37, John, I effing hate you, in a text message. At 12:39, she says, John, I'm here with the effing kids. Nobody knows where the F you are. You effing pervert. Okay. That's said at 1. Oh no, that's said at 12:39. At 1:10 a.m., she says, It's 1 in the morning. I'm here with your effing niece and nephew. You effing pervert. You're a pervert. At 1:17 a.m., she says, quote, John, I am going home. You're effing another girl. They didn't say the niece's name, but the niece is sleeping next to me. And her last call attempt and text attempt was at 1:18 a.m. So 40-ish minutes after she started calling him. And she said that she fell asleep next to the niece at his house. So she was still at his house. Okay. This kind of goes back to his phone now that we can see. At 12:31, we see that his phone got another text from McCabe that said hello. And then another one at 12:42 saying, where are you? And another, the last one at 12:45 saying hello again. So this kind of shows that she was in the house. She gave him directions. She doesn't know if he got there, and he clearly wasn't in the house if she was texting him.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that kind of showed how it was not going very well between the two of them. And she clearly was not very happy.
Yeah, and we don't see everything, and I feel like even throughout like the information we've seen, and tell me if I'm wrong, but like there wasn't a lot of discussion about prior to this happening.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of focus on she's sending all of these text messages like in this time frame, and they're pretty aggressive, like angry messages. So they don't
Yeah,
really talk about what the relationship looked like prior to this, but they were dating for let's say 2-ish years at this point.
yeah. And I think it's like, again, when people start to drink, obviously emotions get heightened. I do
Mhm.
wonder, like, clearly I can't remember if there was like a fight or something that obviously like him going to a friend's house did not warrant all these text messages.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously he wasn't responding, but like if he's with friends, like he might not respond in 3 minutes when she calls him 7 times
Yeah.
if it's on like ring or whatever, um, or if it's on silent. So I do wonder what happened, like maybe at the bar or like in the weeks prior. Was there some type of fight, which I don't remember if there was or not. But
Yeah. I
clearly
don't
she wasn't very happy.
Yeah, and definitely back to the drinking, like we get into it later, but it's like her blood alcohol level was like way higher than even the legal limit.
Yeah.
So that could have caused it. But then you also think like, okay, well, it's just so random. Like if she went home, like where did in 2 minutes, I think, is when she started these phone calls. Like 2 minutes after he supposedly, sh 2 minutes after she supposedly left the house and he was inside or whatever the deal was.
Yeah, pretty quick. Um, so yeah, there's this next part kind of obviously shows where he clearly was, which we obviously find out later in this case. But
Mm-hmm.
his phone actually collected like some data on the drop in battery temperature, which I think is so interesting that a phone can even you can even get that information.
Yeah.
So we see that his phone at 12:37 a.m. started at 72 degrees, which we do know that it was in his pocket. His phone was in his pocket, which we'll talk about in a second too. But his phone started at 72 degrees and then it collected like 7 times until 6:35 a.m. where his phone was 37 degrees. So that's like a 40-degree jump in temperature, and clearly we know that obviously he was outside.
And
So
it's snowing, it's cold, all those things
it's
make
a
very good
literal
sense.
blizzard, and people are like supposed to be staying inside. And he was like, we'll get into this also, but he was not dressed for the snow at all. Um, so that's crazy. Just that you can see that from 12:37 to 6:35,
Mm-hmm.
about 6 hours, how much of a degree difference? 40 degrees. That's crazy. I
Yeah.
didn't like that a phone can even do that. Um,
Okay, so kind of moving on to a little more information into the morning time after these texts, starting to wonder where we are, all those things. So between 12:33 a.m. and 5:52 a.m., the phone was in his pocket and did not record an out of pocket state until 6:02. So meaning it was never taken out of his pocket, he never used it. And again, like Emily said, it had locked for the final time like that minute or a minute prior.
which is
Um,
actually interesting. I again, like I said, I didn't know that the phone could like record temperature. You could see that drop. Um, but it is interesting, like this like out of pocket state.
that
They talk about
yeah.
this a lot, where it's like if your phone's in your pocket, like the I guess like the camera or something turns on, and like the phone can tell if it's not turned on for a while, like where it is, and so they
Mhm.
could tell that his phone was in his pocket for those six
Yeah,
hours.
honestly, him having his phone on him is probably the thing that
Right.
was the most helpful in some ways, but so again, like at 6:02, that is when it recorded out of pocket. But we'll get to that point. So, Reed, Karen Reed, then woke up at 4:38 a.m. and had this big realization. And how she describes it is she just like felt kind of this weird anxiety about what was going on and realized that O'Keefe was still gone. She tried to call him, he didn't answer. And Jennifer McCabe and a friend of his named Carrie Roberts. Um, Carrie says that Reed said, so Karen called and told Carrie, John is
All
dead.
of their names are very similar.
They are all very similar. It's kind of a tongue twister. So next she told Carrie Roberts that she thought she had a fear that John was dead. He might have gotten hit by a snowplow. So again, woke up, called these friends and called this friend and was like, John's dead, something happened, I don't know. And that's how she describes it, as like something was wrong and she just knew it.
Mhm.
Um, O'Keefe's niece claimed after talking to investigators that she heard Reed yelling over the phone to, we're guessing, Carrie,
Mhm.
saying in direct quotes, could I have done something? Could he have been hit by a plow? Maybe I like hit him. So
Mhm.
niece overhears this. Um, at 5:07 a.m., Reed was seen driving away on the Ring camera, so O'Keefe's Ring camera. At the same time, Jennifer McCabe and Nicole Albert, going back to the wife
Mhm.
of the other Albert, who's the
Yes.
police officer.
Happy.
A lot of names.
Yeah.
So Jennifer McCabe and Nicole Albert talked for 38 seconds on the phone. Very
Mhm.
phone call. Um, and later they denied this conversation.
Mhm.
The three of them spend an hour looking for John, going and trying to find him. They go to all the bars that they went to. They went back to his house, all these different places. So at 6 a.m., Reed, McCabe, and Roberts arrived at the Alberts' house where they found John O'Keefe dead by a flagpole in the front yard. They called 911 at 6:03 in the morning. Um, Sorry for laughing, guys. Maybe you'll see this in the preview. Maybe you'll not. But I said they called 911, which I'm not wrong, but it's 911. So, anyways, um,
We had to lock back in and restart that part.
so going back to the phone data for O'Keefe. So O'Keefe's phone data recorded movement for the first time at 6:04 since 12:32 a.m.
Yeah.
Um, so we could assume that it was probably the three women checking to see if he was alive at all, if they could resuscitate him. And that's kind of where the incident in itself ends, if one could say.
Yeah.
Um, when they did the autopsy, they found a couple of different things that they highlighted throughout this case. So I'm gonna read through the quick little list, but there was when he was found, he was cold to the touch. He was not dressed in good clothes for the snowstorm. We could probably assume some of this is the guy was going out to a bar, not necessarily thinking about like, oh, I'm gonna put on like snow
Snow pants.
pants and his yeah,
No.
no, literally. He was like, I'm
His
ready to go
jacket
out.
was like super thin. It was like a thin, like North Face looking jacket.
Yeah, like very much just I'm going to drink and party with my friends. He had injuries to his face and head, and this is where it gets a little tricky. He had a skull fracture. He had head trauma, which they identified that it looked like he fell rather than he got hit by something. He had lacerations to his eyelids and face. He had two black eyes, a missing shoe. There were, and I feel like this is a interesting part where some articles out there, this is a kind of a toss up, but there were marks on his arms that looked to be like dog bites. Um, it looked like it was German Shepherd bites, and prosecution believed it was wounds inflicted by a shattered drink glass or a tailgate of a tail light of a car.
Yeah.
Um, so kind of with that last part, that was a huge part of the case where there's these marks, they don't really know where they came from.
Hmm.
It could have been dog bites, could have been hit by something like the glass, or from the car. So it's three possibilities of what they were, but they did not know for sure.
Yeah, and didn't her car have a shattered tail light?
Yes, her
Yeah.
car did have a shattered taillight, and at the same time, the Alberts, and we'll get into this stuff when we kind of talk about the overview of the trial. Um, the Alberts had a German Shepherd. So that's why there's also this like toss up in the air of what those actually are.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, hearing before we get into the trial, I just think it's bizarre because it's like there's so many different people involved, and I
Yeah,
feel like it's so unusual for crimes or killings where there's so many people around that see one person, and like they all there wasn't a time really, if you think about it, where he could have been alone or people could have not seen him, and
right,
somehow we have two completely different stories from one person to like let's estimate like 10 other people.
right. Yeah. It is like, it's very strange.
It's very odd.
And like they have
um
so much information on all of the timing.
yeah, and
So it's
especially
still,
with the phones too, like exactly what's going on. And still, it's still an unknown of truly like what happened.
yeah.
But kind
Ugh,
of going into the trial, everything, so the trial was a whole big mess. So keeping in mind this is a very condensed version of what happened and like very straight to the point. So on February
this
1st
whole
of
thing that we're saying is condensed.
it's
Like
very
there's
condensed.
so much that we can go into that we wouldn't even be able to upload it on like Spotify or YouTube,
No.
that it's going to be so long. So we're just trying to give like an overview. But if you guys want us to go more into detail on any of it, like we're happy to in another part 2 episode at some point.
Mhm.
Um, but our job here is to just kind of, give you all the information and do with it
Yeah.
what you
Yeah.
want.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah. So again, this is kind of going into the trial, what
yeah.
happened, very brief bullet points, and again, I have a little thing that I'm looking at, but starting for February 1st, 2022. So not even a month later. Um, Reed was charged with multiple things. She was charged with manslaughter, leaving the scene of a motor vehicle accident, um, causing death by motor vehicle, and also a motor vehicle homicide. So those are four different things. Um, for her first trial, she pled not guilty. Um, so went through all these things, and we'll go back to this, but one part that was very interesting with the first trial is she told paramedics like I hit him, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him, but we'll get into that. So keep this in mind. She pled not guilty after saying all this stuff. We move on. So June 10th of 2022, so a couple months later, the grand jury indicts Reed on charges. She pled not guilty again. She pays the $100,000 bail to get out. We move into the pre-trial, all those things, kind of putting in all that evidence, right? And then on April 16th of 2024, the first trial began. So we're about, let's say, 2-ish years past when the incident happened. Um, and again, such a brief overview, but prosecutors alleged she intentionally hit O'Keefe with her car and killed him. So, saying she did all these things. The main pieces of evidence that were really highlighted in this case was a piece of broken taillight was found at the scene. um, Keep in mind that her car also had a broken taillight. DNA was found on the taillight as well of O'Keefe. That was interesting because a lot of people were also like, well, they share a car, like he could have touched it, all these things. So that's a big component that they used.
Mhm.
Um, and going back to the text that Emily read, they use the relationship and those like more aggressive comments as a big kind of motive as to why she might do this. Um, in the flip side, the defense argued that O'Keefe went into Brian Alberts, the other police officer's home, and was killed there at some point.
Mhm.
Um, they suggested that the German Shepherd that the Alberts had at the time um, may have killed him by biting him, whatever, which who knows, but they suggested that the wounds that were on his arms were dog bites. And shortly after this whole thing, which is a whole other thing, the Alberts rehomed their dog for really no reason. They talked about how this dog had attacked two other people previously, but very shortly after O'Keefe had passed away, the dog was gone from this home, which is very
That's a
suspicious.
little less, yeah.
That's what I'm saying. That part is where it really gets me. Um, in addition, they also talked about this where they kind of proposed that this was a big cover up, and how the Alberts or people in that home did intentionally kill O'Keefe. And they had a close relationship with Trooper Michael Proctor. Um, and he was the lead investigator of this whole crime. So, what they were really saying is that this investigator had a conflict of interest since um, he knew the Alberts really well. They could be planting evidence because of this ability to kind of manipulate like what you're seeing, all these things. And after they arrested Reed, there were text exchanges of Albert texting Michael Proctor saying that the defendant was a real whack job, was saying some other derogatory words about her that I chose to keep out. And in terms of when they were looking through her phone for more evidence, they were searching directly for nude photos,
Yeah.
which had nothing to do with the crime itself, and that was a big reason as to why they were like, this makes no sense. Why are you doing some of these things?
Yeah.
Um, so first trial, right? We go through it.
Yeah.
We go through it. And then on July 1st of 2024, a mistrial was declared because the jurors were deadlocked. They failed to come up with a verdict. They tried, and they had no clue. And then because of Michael Proctor and kind of how the investigation went, there was a huge concern with giving Karen Read the right to a fair trial. So then they appointed Hank Brennan as the lead prosecutor for the next trial. But so far, pretty much leading up to this, we've learned what happened to John O'Keefe. Horrible, horrible. They go through months of deliberation, sharing their evidence, all these things, testimonies, and then they go, yeah, no, you're going to have to do this all over again.
Yeah. Ugh. And it's crazy, like, how public this was. Like I said,
Mm-hmm.
all of my family and friends who were in Massachusetts at the time, like, every single news station, every single day around, like, all of these trials, like, that is all that was on TV. Um,
Yeah.
and, like, people would go to, like, the house, the Alberts house, drive past it, like, take pictures of it. Like, it was craziness.
Well, it's
And
bizarre. It's not even like you truly have no clue. Like even sitting here reading about all this, talking about it, like I couldn't give you an answer of like 100% this is what somebody did because I truly have no idea.
yeah, I, yeah, no. And it is crazy, like, the marks, like, I don't know if you saw the picture of his arm, but it's like,
Hmm.
it could 100% be a dog bite. It could 100% be a tail light. It's like, and it's so sus that they
That's
rehomed the
what I'm
dog right after.
That's what I'm saying. It's like, well, and here's the whole thing too. It's like, well, did they get rid of it because they were all freaked out and they were like, well, our dog didn't do it, but like we don't want to be wrapped up in this, or did they do it because they were guilty? And on top of that, like the 40-second phone call between
Yeah,
Albert's wife and the friend
yeah.
where it's right before they go out searching for him for an hour, that's so odd. Like, and
And that
also,
they, like, didn't even, they, like, couldn't even say that that happened. Like, they denied the conversation. I'm like,
yeah,
that's
it's
weird.
crazy. It just makes no sense, and it's like it's giving this idea that like everybody's hiding everything, and
Yeah.
it just is like,
And, like,
um,
again, it was a snowstorm, and I think the whole thing was, like, she maybe backed up into a snowbank, and that's why her tailgate or her tail light was
yeah,
crushed. Like, I don't know.
No, and it is like it is strange where it's like, okay, these text messages, right? And it's also like she's obviously very angry, but at the same time it is like, well, what, she wakes up and she's all concerned about what happened, being like,
Yeah.
well, what if I hit him? What if I hit him? What if that was me? And it just is odd that it's like, okay, there's obviously concern. Like, if she was
Yeah.
this horrible human being, let's be honest, like, if you were to commit a murder, like, or you did this intentionally, right? I wouldn't be calling, like, Emily in the
Well,
morning if I had no concerns.
that's what I'm saying, and also like all of her text messages that she sent with the F word that I read, um, those were all sent like after he was in the snow already, and so I feel like she wouldn't be like unless she was really trying to play like some type of crazy thing. Like I feel
Hmm.
like she wouldn't have sent all of these text messages that are like don't look very good for her after
Yeah.
she's already hit him and he's in the snow. Like I
Yeah.
feel
I
like she
also,
clearly was concerned or like
hmm,
angry that he wasn't responding.
see, I also think about like, okay, when I think about like houses, right? And especially in Massachusetts, everything is so pushed together and condensed.
Hmm.
Nobody saw or heard
Right.
someone hit another human being.
Right.
Like you would think, or at least like he, I believe the autopsy was like he passed away from both hypothermia and also like blunt force trauma of some kind. So
Yeah.
it's like, wouldn't you think, okay, like he didn't pass away immediately. There's no one who, all the people walking in or like inside the house partying, they wouldn't be like hearing him say anything. But at the same
Well,
time, it is
and
just odd.
yeah, and like those people that showed up and saw her in the car, like alone, like they didn't see
Mhm.
him laying in the snow or they didn't hear him like right, he didn't die right away. So
Yeah.
like they didn't hear him like, "Oh, someone hit me" or whatever. Like I
Yeah.
think everyone in the house is like definitely hiding something.
Yeah.
So a little bit forward the next year on March 19th, 2025, the lead investigator who we talked about, Michael Proctor, was dishonorably discharged from the force. He was guilty on 3 counts of unsatisfactory performance and 1 count of drinking alcohol on duty. He also, which has come to light more recently, that he sent a lot of inappropriate, derogatory, horrible text messages about Reed during the investigation, but also about like a lot of other people. Like he said bad things about like every single group you could think of.
Hmm.
Um, so that's not good. So he
Yeah, and
was
I feel like that's a big point of like understanding of this guy who was headlining, but like leading the investigation.
yeah,
He was obviously doing things that he shouldn't have been doing, and
correct.
that's why he also got kicked off of being that. So I think that's a good idea of just being like, okay, that's odd that like if everything was so clean and perfect, he probably would have continued to have a job. He would have continued to be the lead investigator into the second trial.
Correct. Yeah, so that's not good. And first of all, not good that he said stuff about Reed, but like you don't want your um uh like what is he technically? Okay. You don't
Hmm.
want your like trooper or like lead investigator saying these horrible things about like every single minority or group in your
Yeah.
state. So, anyways, that's a big part about why he was, not part of it and now he's not a trooper. So on April 22nd of 2025, um, another jury was selected for the retrial. New jury, this retrial began. On June 18th, which is a year ago today when we're filming,
And this
of
was not planned
2025.
at all.
No, we literally just found it out 3 seconds ago. She was acquitted of second-degree murder. She was found guilty for driving under the influence, obviously, 100%. She had 1 year of probation and she entered an outpatient program. Um, she had this trial was 30 days of testimony and 4 days of deliberation, um, which this is crazy because she truly like I just remember I was home last summer during this time and I just remember like everything on the TVs, like
Oh my gosh, I
every
remember
news.
literally her walking out of the courthouse
Yeah,
like
yeah.
with her fan club waiting for her.
Literally. Yeah. So that was a year ago today when we're filming. It's June 18th today.
And
Um,
keep in mind, like, I think a good point is even like we didn't go into any detail in regard to the second trial. So,
yeah.
like, some of this stuff, I believe there were some, from what I was reading, is like some witnesses they ended up leaving off and not having them testify. Um, because again, right, with the retrial, they get to do pretty much a do-over, and like everything from the previous trial was kept out. It's a brand new jury, they haven't heard any of this before, so there's a lot of that in there. But yeah, she got away, and to this day I still don't think that they've technically found like a guilty party for who killed him.
Right. And also, I was just looking at the timeline. This was a year ago today when she
Yeah,
walked out.
that's
Like, I
literally,
so remember that, which
yeah.
is just so crazy.
Mm.
So yeah, I was going through this timeline that we have.
Even that timeline was very like vague, I should say.
It definitely was, and it's just this is interesting. On June 9th, so like 9 days ago,
Hmm.
um, the public defenders wanted a list of every single case involving the trooper Michael Proctor, um, after all of his texts were discovered. So I do wonder, like, are other cases
Mm.
going to be retried, or I don't know. That only happened 9 days ago, so who knows? But I think that that's interesting. Like, it's not just her case that was affected by
I
this.
mean, I think that in some ways, like, I know that there's a lot about, like, police cover up out there. There's a lot of controversy surrounding that and how police, for years, it's not all of them, but there has been some who have covered up and done all these things. And I feel like this could open a whole new thing. Like, imagine the Alberts or whoever they were, like he got too drunk, he fell, he hurt himself or whatever the deal was, or they hurt him or his dog, who knows? And then he was like, "Oh, don't worry, I'll help you. Like I'm not going to."
Which I think is
Also,
100% what happened. Like,
oh
there's
yeah,
no way, right?
I definitely think it's odd about some things where it's like, okay, like your taillight was broken, that's a
Yeah.
little weird. I think some of it is definitely like I think also the timing of the phone movement where she technically moved I think at 12:31,
Hmm.
and then a minute later his phone reported no more moving. So I think
Right.
that's weird, but I also think it's weird where it's like it, it's like she's so concerned. And I mean, I also think the lead investigator, like, there's things where I definitely don't know if she did it, but
Yeah.
it's like there's a lot of things pinned against her, or a lot of people where it kind of feels like they're all ganging up on her and being like,
Yeah.
"Oh, you you did it, right?" But they also kind of seem a little odd.
Yeah. Yeah. I do agree with that. I think that she didn't do it, but the evidence is very hard to say that 100%. Like you just said. Like, there's a
Hmm.
lot that could go both ways, but we don't know.
Yeah. And who
But
knows what's
we did
gonna
it.
come out of it, right? Like she's also very public about her trial. Like she's gone on, I believe, Good Morning America and like done
Yeah.
60-minute interviews about it. And she has been like, I love John, like I want to figure out what happened, like all of those things. And she's talked about like advocacy work
Yeah.
for figuring out what happened, but who also knows, right? Where it's like, I think it's going to be very telling as well. And it's been a year, so who knows what she's been up to. But like, if she's advocating to
Right.
get justice for John and his family, or is she like, yeah, I'll do that, and then she never actually does anything to make any sort of change?
I know. And I'm like, maybe we will have to do a part two if more stuff
Hmm.
comes out in the next trial, but like, oh,
The
yeah.
Alberts are sus. There's something going on
They got
there.
rid of their dog.
Also, they're texting, literally being
Yeah.
like, yeah, she sucks, she's horrible. And then they're kind of conspiring with the lead investigator about like finding evidence, finding nude photos
Yeah.
of her, all these weird things where it's like, like, why are you shouldn't have any like decision making and like what they're looking for in this investigation.
No, it is very odd. And the timing in all of their things are very odd.
Hmm.
Weird. Well,
I feel like I feel like this leads a good question for our listeners who have listened this long, or if you're taking breaks or you go do research on your own. I would
yeah,
love to know what you guys think and leaving
yeah,
like a comment and being like, I think she did, I think she didn't, or if there's any evidence that we didn't talk about
yeah.
that you feel like would be helpful, like letting us know too, because there's so much. Like it could take days for you to treat. It took 30 days to talk about the case the second time around, and it
Right.
took like
And
three
4 days for
months.
them to decide. Like four
Yeah.
whole work days for them to decide on a decision.
Yeah, so an hour is not gonna give us our
Exactly. Yeah. But
decision,
we
but
will
yeah.
like totally do a second part if you guys want us to talk about other evidence that you say or everybody's thoughts. Like we could even go through and like talk about what we think other people think. So we're happy to do that. But we hope that you guys enjoyed this little overview and maybe like it made you want to like dive deeper or watch one of her interviews. She
Hmm.
definitely was on like a bunch of stuff, like you just said. Like I watched her like 2020 thing. Like she was on
Yeah.
like literally everything. Which is kind of interesting hearing like it from her, which obviously like that's just going to be her side, but it is interesting hearing her talk about how she thinks, I guess, the night went.
Yeah. Well, I also think it's interesting because a lot of times, right, it's like with if you're a defendant, they have the opportunity to go and be kind of like a witness, so like go on the stand, but they chose not to have her go on the stand, I believe. So it's so interesting now. And I think it also makes it more interesting where it's like, okay, if you are innocent, I think about that too. If you are innocent, why not go on the stand? But I know it's so risky. But if you're
Right.
100% innocent, why didn't she go and kind of talk to the juror and be cross-examined and all those sorts of
Yeah,
things?
very odd. And then in the same way, like she's on all these news outlets talking about what
Yeah.
happened. Like that also seems like
Well, she's getting a lot of publicity from it, and
yeah,
it's like, well, what else is she gaining from it?
right,
Like, I'd
right,
be curious to see what her life looks like now when she's trying to get back, because who doubt she has any of the jobs she had before. So
yeah,
it's like, what is she doing now? Where what does her day to day look like? And is this kind of how she's like, ooh, like I can make money off of this?
right. I don't know, and we never will know because we just don't know. But
Yeah,
it's very crazy and very
yeah,
wild and a lot
yeah.
to unpack and a lot of timing. Like
My brain
that's why,
hurts.
right? That's why we were like, we're going to be looking at our screens to get like the exact timing because that's like a huge thing in this case and a huge part of it. Um, but yeah, we appreciate you guys
Yeah.
listening. And again, leave a comment on anyone you want us to talk about.
We've
Subscribe.
got some good ones in the queue.
Yes.
But yes, appreciate you all listening.
Yes.
Again, feel free to leave any suggestions, like Em said, and let us know your thoughts. Do you think she's innocent? Do you think she's guilty?
Yes.
What are we missing? Because I'd be very curious to see what the general population thinks.
Yeah, 100%. Well, thank you, everyone.
Thank you. See you next
Bye.
week. Bye.